Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Huh.
Today we're going to be talking about something that's really important
Okay.
in our increasingly digital world, and that is digital accessibility.
Hmm.
We found a really fascinating source called CheckIST,
Okay.
and in particular, there's an excerpt titled Digital Accessibility, Building a More Inclusive Digital World.
Right.
And it was really eye-opening to me just thinking about,
Yeah.
we rely on the internet now for pretty much everything.
Uh-huh.
And so many of us take it for granted. Can you imagine if you couldn't use the internet? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's a reality for so many people. So I think this will be a good one.
Absolutely. I think this is a topic that we need to dive into a lot more.
Yeah.
It's funny how the internet has gone from being sort of this cool tool to
Yeah.
almost a utility, like
It's got electricity.
electricity or
Or
water.
water now, yeah.
And just like those things, I think access
Yeah,
needs to be universal.
absolutely. So I guess my first question for you is,
Mhm.
what exactly is digital accessibility?
Yeah. So digital accessibility is basically about ensuring that everyone can use digital things, whether that be websites, apps, you name it,
Right.
regardless of any disability. And we're not just talking about,
Okay.
folks in wheelchairs. This includes
Yeah.
people who have visual impairments, hearing impairments, cognitive differences, all sorts of things.
So it's really a lot broader
Yeah.
than I think a lot of people think of when they first hear about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's becoming more and more important every day.
Right.
Yeah.
So why now? I mean, the internet's been around for a while,
Right. Well, think about it this way. How much do you use the internet on a daily basis?
all the time.
Right. Like for work, for banking,
Yeah.
for ordering your groceries. I mean, almost every aspect of our lives.
I can't remember the last time I went to a bank.
Right. Exactly. Now imagine all of that being taken away from you. I mean, that's the level of exclusion we're talking about here. It's not just an inconvenience. It can really impact people's lives, their ability to work, to get an education, to access services. It can even lead to social isolation.
That's a really good point. And that's why this is so crucial. I mean,
Exactly.
it really is about basic access
Yeah,
and equality in a world that's increasingly digital.
absolutely.
So, our source talks about these four principles:
Yeah.
perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Can you kind of break those down for us?
Yeah, so those are kind of like the four pillars of digital accessibility.
Okay.
Perceivable basically means that the information being presented is accessible to all senses,
Yeah.
regardless of a person's ability.
So, for example, for someone who can't see well,
Right.
a website needs to have text alternatives.
Exactly.
correct?
That's where alt text comes in.
Right.
Or for someone who can't hear,
Okay.
videos need to have captions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just have captions. They need to be accurate. They need to be synchronized properly.
Yeah.
And they need to be easy to read.
So you're saying even with things like AI-powered captioning,
Exactly. There are still potential problems. Yeah.
Mm.
Because sometimes the AI can misinterpret things or the
Oh.
captions might not be timed correctly.
Oh.
And that can actually make it harder.
so it's more nuanced than just like turning on captions.
Absolutely.
Okay. What about operable?
So operable basically means that people can navigate and interact with a website or app, even if they have limitations. So for example, this could mean
Okay.
making sure that a website can be navigated using just a keyboard,
Right.
or that it can be controlled using voice commands,
That makes sense.
or avoiding things like complex gestures
Really?
that might be difficult for someone
Yeah.
with motor difficulties.
Yeah, I've definitely run into websites that I can't even navigate with a mouse very well.
Right.
So I can definitely see how that would be a problem.
Yeah, and if it's frustrating for someone with a mouse, imagine how frustrating it is for someone.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Who relies on keyboard navigation? So how does understandable fit into all of this?
So understandable is all about making sure that the content and the interface of a website or app is clear and intuitive. So this means using plain language, avoiding jargon, and making sure that the layout is easy to follow.
But how does that tie in with the other principles?
It's all connected, right? So for example, a website might be perceivable in the sense that you can see all the information. But if it's full of flashing images or confusing animations, it might not be understandable for someone with certain cognitive differences.
Got it.
And if it's not understandable,
I
it's also not really operable.
Right, because they can't really use it.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then finally, we have robust.
Right.
So this is all about making sure that things work on different devices and browsers.
Yeah, so a website or app should work just as well on a desktop computer as it does on a mobile phone or on a tablet. And it shouldn't matter what browsers someone's using.
And that's a good point, because a lot of people don't have a choice
Oh, you
about
bet.
what devices they're using
Hi.
or what browsers,
Yeah.
especially now with so much browsing on mobile phones.
Yeah, responsive design is more important than ever
Mhm.
for accessibility.
So this is all making a lot of sense to me.
I guess.
The question I have is, if this is so important, why isn't everything already accessible?
That's the million-dollar question. I think a big part of it is lack of awareness. A lot of developers simply aren't taught
Mhm.
about accessibility in school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And even if they are, it might not be emphasized as much as it should be. And then there's also the cost factor. Some companies might see accessibility as an added expense rather than an investment.
I hadn't thought about that, but it's true that by not making things accessible, you're actually excluding
Exactly.
potential customers.
And potentially opening yourself up to legal issues.
I didn't realize there were legal ramifications.
Yeah. There are actually laws
Yeah.
and regulations
Yeah.
in many countries that require websites and apps to be accessible.
Wow, I had no idea. So what? What gives you hope for the future?
Well, I think there's a lot to be hopeful about. There's definitely a growing movement pushing for change. We're seeing more legislation and guidelines being put in place. And the tools and resources for developers are constantly improving. But I think what's most exciting is the rise of user advocacy. People with disabilities are speaking out and demanding better. And companies are starting to listen.
That is encouraging. It sounds like we're moving in the right direction.
We are, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, next time you're online, I want you to take a moment to really look at the websites and apps that you're using and think about who might be excluded from that experience. Could someone with a visual impairment navigate that website? What about someone who's using a screen reader or someone who can't use a mouse? These are the kinds of questions that we need to be asking ourselves. And remember, you don't have to be a developer to make a difference. You can advocate for better accessibility in the products and services that you use every day. Because digital accessibility is not just about good design, it's about fundamental human rights.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think that's a great place to leave it.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you later.